find that escape character for the line feed and represent it correctly in our literal string. All right. Now you might say, well, that's all well and good, but what if I need to actually use the backslash character? So, for example, in an instruction to go to your C:/drive, and you'll notice that we get a red squiggly line underneath the backslash because it's expecting us to use the backslash as an escape character, as an escape sequence, but we've given it nothing after that to indicate which escape sequence we want to use. So in this case we have two options. In fact, in all these cases we have two options. We can use another backslash character to escape out of it to represent this correctly. So now you can see that you should go to your C:/drive. Or what we can do, and I'll just do this again, go to your C drive. So what we can do is add a @ symbol in front of the literal string, and that tells C# that we want to use our backslash characters as true backslash characters, not as escape sequences, all right, or special characters. All right, so let's move on from there. And we've already talked about the use of string.format, and we showed how we could do something like this, where we are going to insert the words first and second into this template, and the template contains a number of replacement codes. And the number inside the replacement code corresponds to which argument is passed in to the string.format as input parameters. So let's run the application, and we would get what you might expect, first equals second. What I didn't tell you at the time was that you can actually reuse the replacement code multiple times, like so, or you can use them in a different order if you like. Whoops, let's go back and change up the order, where the second will be the first item displayed and the first will be the second item displayed, like so. All right. Furthermore, the replacement code has some special powers, and for example, if we want to do a string.format and say, for example, that we wanted to display currency to the end user. So I want to display $123.45 to my end user. Now, in my case, since my computer's culture is set to English US, this will be represented as dollars and cents. But if your culture is, if your country and culture codes are set to, for example, English UK or some other language and some other culture, you would probably see something different whenever you choose to do this. You'll see your native country and culture's symbols for currency. But to create and format values for currency, you use the colon and then C immediately after the numeric replacement code. So in this case, I'm using, say, 0 still represents the first item in the list, but the colon C says I want you to format it like currency, all right? So that when we run it, at least on my computer, you'll see dollars and cents, okay, with the dollar symbol. Now there's all sorts of these little variations on this. So for example, what if I wanted to just display a really long number to an end user, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, and I want it to look like a number, not just like how I have it here, where you can't really tell, is that what, 12 billion or 123 million or what? To remove the confusion, what you can do is use the :n format character, and this will add in decimal points and commas to give you the appropriate formatting for a large number, so 1,234,000,000 and so on. Okay. All right. Furthermore, continuing that same thought, what if we were to go string.format and we wanted to represent a value as a percentage? So what if I wanted to display this as a, as a percent? Let's make sure you get those formatting codes in there. And just to show there's nothing up my sleeve here, let's just call this percentage, like so, and then we will insert a percentage here at this replacement code. Let's go ahead and run the application, and you can see that the percentage is 12.3% in this case. Right. And finally, the last one I'm going to show you, but I'll show you where you can find more information, is how to create a custom format. So for example, in the United States, phone numbers have a very specific way that they're presented to So let's go string.format, and let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. And I want that displayed like a phone number. So I would use 0, and then I'm going to use pound symbols to represent each digit that I want formatted. So in this case, actually I'm going to use parentheses around the first 3 numbers, because that's usually how an area code in a phone number in the United States is presented. Then a space, then 3 more numbers, then a dash, then 4 more numbers. All right, that's just how phone numbers are presented in the US. So let's go ahead and run the application now, and you can see that it in fact formats that number the way that I would expect. Now let me throw one little monkey wrench in this. What if I were to supply too many extra digits? I added another 1, 2 at the very end, and yet I don't have that accounted for in my formatting. Where will it be presented? Well, as you can see, it pushes out the area code to 5 digits instead of just 3. So the moral of the story there is that the formatting will go from right to left whenever you're using custom pound symbols to create a custom format for a numeric value. So again, the numbers will push their way out, and once you get to the very end, it will just put as many numbers as it can on that very first character and push that formatting out to the left. So just be aware of that. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do is start manipulating strings in a more meaningful way. Up to this point, we've just been formatting strings, but what if I want to actually change some things about the strings themselves? Let me start by providing a little something that we can sink our teeth into and work with. And so I'm going to type in a lyric from a song that I like. All right, and notice that I added, or I left in, an extra space here at the very beginning of the string, and then I left in 2 spaces at the very end of that string. All right, and so let's go my string equals my string, and I think the most important thing you want to realize about when you're working with these data types is that they do have built-in functionality that were provided to us by Microsoft. So, for example, every string has this substring helper method that we can use to just say, hey, I want to start at a specific point and then grab all of the characters within a given range. So I can say, start at position 6 and grab me back everything after position 6. So when I run the application, you can see it starts with the word summer, which is at the 6th position, and grabs everything to the very end of that line. So here is position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it truncates off the first 6 characters and starts me there, and I'm pulling everything else, giving me a subset of the strings from that point on. But I can also say, go ahead and give me just the next 14 characters after that. So don't give me everything to the very end of that string, just give me the next 14 characters, and so I can isolate just a couple of characters, in this case just 3 words in that string. All right. I can also do something like my string dot, to upper, and that will, actually let me do that, and that will do just what you might think it will. It'll make everything uppercase. Great. What if I wanted to replace one character with a different character? So my string dot replace, and say find every blank space and replace it with a double dash, like so. All right, so now when we run the application, you can see that we get double dashes instead of our spaces. It makes it more obvious that we had some spaces at the beginning and the end. All right. We can also equals my string dot remove, and we can remove a number of characters from our string. So instead of just selecting out the substring of characters we took threes, we can actually remove those entirely from the string. And you can see, or I'm sorry, summer we took, it has been removed from the string completely. And also, what if we were to want to actually remove those trailing and preceding spaces? We could use the trim method. So let's do my string equals, first of all, string dot format, and here I'm going to grab the length of the string just to kind of demonstrate this. The before length, so, and then the after length. Okay, and so let's go my string dot length, and then my string dot, we'll call the trim method to strip off all of the extra spaces in the beginning and the end. Or I could just choose to trim off only the ending spaces or just the beginning spaces, but I'm going to call the trim method to get rid of it all, and then determine what the length of the string is at that point. So you'll recall that we used the length property whenever we were working with the array to find out how many items were in the array. We can also use the length property on a string to tell us how long the string is. So that's ultimately what we're doing here. Tell me how long the string is before we make any changes to it, and then after we trim off those extra spaces, how long is the string itself. Let's run the application again. And so you can see that the before was 46, the after was 43. We trimmed off 3 spaces. Great. All right, the last thing I want to do is talk about the working with strings in a more efficient sort of way. And for example, let me just type in a really quick code example here. So we'll just do this console, well, actually here, my string plus equals, okay, and hopefully you remember what this operator was for, where we're saying give me whatever the value of a string is and concatenate everything on the right hand side to it. So here we're concatenating on just double dashes and then the current value of I as we loop through 100 times. And we'll merely then just display my string in the console window. Whoops. And let's go ahead and actually get rid of that. And we'll start here with a blank slate. All right, so let's run the application. And the output isn't all that interesting. It's just a printout of numbers with some dashes in there. But what's going on behind the scenes is the more interesting part of this. What happens when you're working with the string data type is that it's called a immutable data type, meaning that you can't just add more values to it. What happens behind the scenes is there's this little dance that the .NET framework runtime is performing to make it look like you're still working with the original variable, my string, so the original bucket. But what it does is it creates a second bucket and it starts copying things over. In this case, it copies the previous value of my string plus any of the new stuff we want to put in there, and it creates this new string in a new bucket, and then it removes the old bucket and it gives the new bucket the name my string. Then we say, let's do it again. In fact, let's do it 100 times, and it has to go through that dance 100 times in order to produce the final result that we're printing then in our console window. And as you can see, that's a very inefficient way, and we're requiring a lot of the runtime, a lot of memory management that might put a drain on the system if we were to do a lot of it. So instead, what we can use is a different data type whenever we're going to manipulate strings in this way, where we're going to do a lot of string concatenation or a lot of string manipulation. We can use something called a string builder. So again, just like I said with the random class from the previous video, this may not make a whole lot of sense at first, but hopefully once I talk about what classes are and how to create new instances of classes, this nomenclature that string builder, my string equals new string builder, what is that all doing? We'll talk about that very soon. But just let's create a new string builder class, and then we're going to do something very similar to what we did before, where we will iterate through 100 times, but this time, instead of just doing a simple concatenation, we're going to use an append method, which is a more efficient way to append additional information to this string builder object rather than going through the previous step of forcing the runtime to create all these temporary versions of string. So my string append I, and the result will look identical. But what's going on under the hood is that we're working with strings in a more efficient way. So use the string builder along with the append method of the string builder to work with strings in a very efficient manner. Okay, so we talked about quite a bit in a very short amount of time, how to work with the backslash character for escaping and inserting escape characters, special characters into our literal strings, how to use string.format. In fact, let me show you this little page here for standard numeric string formats. If you just search for this on bing.com, you'll be able to find this article, and it gives you examples and many other usages for the format that we looked at several examples of here. We looked at several of the built-in helper methods to replace or define subsections or completely remove or actually create two upper or two lower to change the case of strings, and then finally how to work with strings in a more efficient manner. Okay, so now we're going to give the same treatment to dates and times, because you'll again find yourself working with dates and times frequently whenever you're building applications, and there's a lot of similar kind of functionality there as well. We'll see in that next lesson. Thank you. Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with Developer University. For more of my training videos for beginners, please visit me at devu.com. In the previous lesson, we looked at how to format strings and how to manipulate strings, whether it be for display or for the purpose of massaging data. In this lesson, we'll do the same thing except for dates. So we'll start off by talking about formatting dates and times. We'll look at how to add and subtract time to a given date. We'll look at how to create a date-time object that represents this moment in time, or the past, or the future. And then finally, we'll look at how to determine the length or the duration of time between two date-time objects. So to begin, I've created a new project called Dates and Times. Pause the video, please, and catch up with me. And what we'll do here is actually just create a new date-time object by going date-time, and we'll just call this my value. And we're going to initialize its value to a valid date time. So the easiest way to do that is to represent this very moment as the application is executing. So we'll go datetime.now, and that represents this instant. All right, and the easiest thing that we can do is just do a console.writeLine taking my value and calling the toString method. Now you'll see we have a lot of to something strings, and we'll look at several of these in an effort to format our date time the way that we want. But this default toString method will take our country and our locale and will present dates and times as they are typically presented in our country and in our culture. So here in the United States, we usually represent the month first and then the date. I know in other countries, most other countries, it's date, month, year. And then we have the time of afternoon that I'm actually recording the video. Notice that it also has AM, PM as opposed to military time or 24 hours. So in order to change the way that this is presented, we're given a bunch of other additional helper methods, and so we can do something like this. So myValue.to short date string, and this will just display the month, date, year. We can also do and isolate the short time string. So here we just want to display what time of day it is. All right, 3:35 in the afternoon, great. We can also choose a more long form version of the date. And you can see it's Tuesday, March 15, 2016 as I record this. And we can do the same longer version for time as well. So myValue.toLong time string. All right, and so you can see not only do we have hours and minutes, but also seconds in the long time string. Great. All right, so oftentimes what we'll want to do is do some date time math, which means we either want to add hours, minutes, I guess seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, years, whatever the case might be. But we can do it through a series of helper methods, the add methods. So here I'm just going to console write line, and we'll take my value, and we'll start off with something simple like add days. You can see that we can add milliseconds, seconds, hours, days, and everything up from there. So let's just do something simple like add days. So we'll add 3 days, and then we'll just do a to long date string on it like that. Now you may have noticed me do this in the past where I've used the period, remember that's the member access operator, and chain together a series of commands. So in this case, we have a value that represents a date. If I were to call the add days method, notice as I hover my mouse cursor over it that the return value of add days is another date time. So now since I have another date time in my hand that represents today plus 3 days, then I can call that date times to long date time string, which now returns, as you can see, a string data type. So that's the notion of chaining method calls together. As long as you continue to chain together methods that return some value of some data type, you can continue to call methods for that given data type. All right, so let's go ahead and see now 3 days from now it will be in fact Friday March 18th. And let's do something with regards to hours, and let's go my value add hours, and we'll add 3 hours to long time string, and that will be 6:38 p.m. Okay. And then what if I wanted to subtract time? Are there any subtract hours or subtract days? No. However, what you can do is simply use a negative number to subtract. So instead of adding days, I'll subtract days. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and run that. And you can see 3 days ago, it was Saturday, March 12th. Great. All right. So in addition, we can just grab off parts of a date or time. So here again, let's go, whoops, let's go my value, and let's just pull off this current month, and this will return an integer. Now console.writeLine we know can accept an integer, so we'll just go ahead and print out the current month. So the third month, obviously that's going to be March. Okay. All right, now we've looked at how to create the current date time, but what if I wanted to create a date time in the past or in the future? I could do something like this. So date time, and I'm going to call this my birthday. And here again is that new keyword that I've hinted at a number of times. We will get to it. Don't worry. But I'm going to use it one more time. New date time, and I'm going to pass in the year 1969. The month, December, and then the day, the 7th. That was when the day I was born. And so now what I can do is something like we've been doing up to this point, console.writeLine, and just my birthday, .to, short date string, just to prove that it's a date just like the other dates that we've been working with. So 12/7/1969. All right. Now there's one final way to create a new date time, so let's create another version of birthday equals datetime.parse. Remember we've used int parse. We were able to take a string and turn it into an integer. Here we're going to take a string and turn it into a date, hopefully. So we'll just type in my birthday again one more time, and that should give us a date time object that represents December 7, 1969. And now what I'm going to do is try to determine how many hours that I've been alive or how many days I've been alive. Days is probably a more interesting number. And in order to represent a span of time, we're going to use a new data type called time span. So here I'm going to use a new time span, and we're going to call this my age equals datetime.now subtract, and the subtract method will take the current date and subtract whatever date we want to use. So in this case we'll use my birthday. Okay, so now that I have an object that represents a span of time, I can say represent that span of time in terms of days or years or whatever the case might be. So to do that, I'll go console.writeLine, and then I'll use this myAge dot, and here I can say give me the total number of days that I've been alive, and print those to screen. And you can see I've been alive, what, almost, well, 16,900 days. Whew. I'm getting old. Okay, I say that every time I record this video, and I feel older every time. So at any rate, here we were able to format dates for display. We're able to manipulate dates by adding and subtracting date and time, and then we're able to determine the difference between two dates using a time span object. We also talked about different ways to create a date, whether it be now or sometime in the past or future, by either just using one of the versions of the date time objects constructor, we'll talk about that later, or by using datetime.parse and passing in a string. Okay, so let's stop right there, and we'll pick it up in the next lesson. Doing great. See you there. Thanks. Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with Developer University. For more of my training videos for beginners, please visit me at devview.com. You might recall at the outset of this course, I said that a class is a container for related methods, and I used the console class as an example of this. We had the console.writeLine, console.readLine, console.write, we even used console.clear, all of these methods that had something to do with working with a console window, and so I said it makes sense to put them all in the same class, the console class. Now, truth be told, I intentionally oversimplified my explanation about classes and their relationship to methods, because first of all, I wanted you to gain a little bit of confidence in yourself that you can do this, that this isn't hard. You can get your hands around it and you're going to do just fine. And I wanted to do that before we got into the topic of classes, because while there's nothing hard per se about classes, they do lend themselves